Hello and welcome to the Room of Lives. I am your host Neil. In this second episode, I have a one-on-one conversation with Lynn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who created the anonymous dark web marketplace Silk Road and was arrested and sentenced to 2 life terms plus 40 years in maximum security prison without parole. I begin by asking Lynn for her views on what happened in Ross's case and trial. Did creating the website make Ross responsible for harmful trading on it? Why does Lynn think that the state tampered with evidence and possibly violated the Fourth Amendment of privacy as it looked through data without warrants? Lynn tells me about the state repeatedly blocking the defense cross-examination and about 2 corrupt investigators who were in prison for stealing Bitcoin, and what, according to her, are the state's motivations to come down so heavily on her son. We then talk about the relentless activism that she threw herself into since Ross got arrested. What has this activism looked like? Who are the people and groups that listened to her after everyone turned away? We discuss Ross's petition that became very popular, why even general U.S. citizens that are unconnected to the case should care about it, since it influences the laws that are taking shape for the digital age. Lynn then shares her experiences and lessons learned on this long, hard road, and her views on prisons and the drug war. Then we talk a bit about Ross the human being. What was his early life and upbringing like in Austin? Lynn has said that he had philosophical and ideological reasons for creating Silk Road. What were Ross's philosophies and ideology? Which of those did Lynn differ from? What kind of person is Ross, and how has he been acting in prison and towards other inmates? What kind of conditions is he living in, and how has he been treated? Lynn tells me about Ross's involvement in Eastern philosophy and Buddhist meditation, and how she and his friends and family keep visiting to keep up his mental well-being. How has Ross been doing mentally and emotionally all this time, and what are his reflections on his experiences? I finally end by asking her what the future of her activism looks like. If you enjoy visiting us in the Room of Lives, consider donating Ether, DAI, or other Ethereum-based coins to abhranil.eth. That's abhranil.eth. All right, so in the interest of time, I have this list of questions,
Sure.
but I'll try to go through them sort of more quickly than I imagined, so that I hit all the
it's
points.
like you have a little wiggle room, so don't worry too much. I mean, I could probably an hour and 15 or whatever if you need it. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So before, prior to our conversation, I'll append my background.
Sure.
A voiceover background on the whole story, so we don't need to talk about the whole story.
Oh, good. I thank you.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah. Sure. So I want to start first. Let me make sure that this is. Yep. Okay. So I want to start first with what is your position on the whole situation? What do you or what do his lawyers, what is the position as in what do you believe he did and what do you believe he didn't do?
Okay. Well, I believe Ross. And what was brought up at trial, Ross says that he created the website.
Yeah.
He created a website to protect the privacy and anonymity of its users.
Yeah.
He did not create a drug website.
Hmm.
It operated on the Tor browser with using the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, which was the anonymity. And Ross got very involved with Ron Paul campaign in grad school in '08. He was on fire for freedom, passionate about free markets, and he wanted to create something that gave people an experience of a truly free market.
Yeah.
Just so people understand, it was an open market, basically unregulated, but there were rules, which is not true of a lot of the markets now.
That's true.
And because Ross is very strongly believes in voluntary interaction, not using force, and not victimizing people. So, for example, no child pornography was permitted, no stolen property was permitted. No hitmen, even though you might read that.
Yeah.
And many other outrageous things I've read that people say were on there. And I'm like, even the government doesn't say that. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there were rules, but it was generally product agnostic. It was up to the buyer and seller what they chose to exchange within those very few parameters. Don't victimize, don't hurt others, don't use force.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people did sell drugs, mainly small amounts of marijuana, which is not something that's talked about much in media or by the government, but it was mainly small amounts of marijuana as far as drugs were concerned. But I've talked to people who said I had gold on there.
Yeah.
I had raw milk, books, art, many other things. You never see those in the screenshots about Silk Road. You only see the worst possible things. And look, I'm not defending what the site became, and or a lot of things that are on there. That's not my interest, and I understand people's upset about it. But that's not what Ross intended, and he never intended harm. I mean, I know him. So that he said he created it. He said he got out of it. He had other interests, and it got over. It's almost anecdotally such a strong case by people who were there in the administration that there were many Dread Pirate Roberts, who maybe you've explained who that is, the pseudonym of, including corrupt agents, had the ability to act as Dread Pirate Roberts. So we don't know really who at any given time was Dread Pirate Roberts. But in any case, and then as his lawyer said at trial, he was lured back in to help out with some things. He was downloading the Colbert Report in the library. That came out in trial. You never read that. It's always, he was caught red-handed on the site. Well, yeah, except
he was torrenting the
Colbert Report.
But what I read, and this is on a Wired article,
okay,
I read that he was also logged in.
He was asked to log in by the agent who was there. He messaged him and said, "Can you log in?"
Yeah.
And then he logged in.
Yeah.
So he did have the ability to log in. I'm not denying it. The point being is that he wasn't there running Silk Road at the library. And he was downloading the Colbert Report. I question that he was the guy running Silk Road at that time. And actually, after Ross was in prison for 7 weeks, someone else logged in as Dread Pirate Roberts. Who was that? But that was discovered after trial, so that could only be brought to before a jury at another trial.
Yeah.
But it was discovered, and it was covered by the news, and it.
So this happened before they shut Silk Road down. Because they eventually shut it down.
Yeah, well,
his arrest, I
think they shut down. They didn't shut down the forum. They just shut down the market.
Yeah.
So it was the last login by this Dread Pirate Roberts was 4 days before they shut down the forum, but it was 7 weeks after Ross's arrest.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many other times this person logged into either, because you only see the last login.
Yeah. I see. So I read that Dread Pirate Roberts, whether this was Ross or not, I don't know. But at an initial phase, this person wrote, "Our basic rules are to treat others as you would wish to be treated, and don't do anything to hurt or scam someone else." But it seems like it wasn't, he didn't explicitly ban things like child porn and murder. It was more like, this is a code of conduct, but it was left to people to follow it or not?
Well, I read some of the forum discussions where people were arguing for child porn because it's a free choice, and whoever was Dread Pirate Roberts was saying, I don't know if it was Ross, was saying, well, just go somewhere else then because it's not going to happen. Yeah. So I read that in official stuff. So maybe it wasn't specific things were not listed in the manifesto. Yeah. Manifestos usually don't list specific things. Yeah. It covers the whole principle of do no harm. So, and people could argue, well, drugs do harm, but the point with libertarians is, well, that's up to you if you're an adult to decide what you want to do with your own body. And but children certainly do not have that
this
choice. And
brings me to an interesting question. So I was reading that Curtis Green, he forwarded, I'm quoting this, Green forwarded one troubling customer service complaint from a woman whose brother overdosed on heroin from Silk Road and noted that under the current system, children could use the site. Perhaps that was a hair too much freedom, Green said. DPR erupted, that's my whole idea. Any constraints would destroy the fundamental concept, he said, and refused any assistance for the grieving sister.
Really, I don't know anything. That certainly doesn't sound like something Ross would say, but I really don't know anything. This is the first I've heard that. Okay. I can tell you that Curtis Green has tweeted that he doesn't believe Ross was behind Murders for Hire or had it in him to do that, and that, basically he knows a lot and he can't talk about it now because he's under contract or something. But so I don't believe that Curtis would think that was Ross, because I believe Curtis thinks there were other people operating as Dread Pirate Roberts. I wonder how a child could have opened a Bitcoin account and learned how to use Tor. I wonder how old that. I mean, not that it matters. It's a life and it's terrible. I don't, like I say, I'm not going to defend Silk Road or drug use. I think I'm not advocating for drugs at all. I do think that people have a right to decide. Yeah. Not that children is a different story, of course. I don't think people should be put in prison because they decide. It's not in our Constitution. When they prohibited alcohol, they had to have an amendment to the Constitution to prohibit alcohol and another amendment to lift that prohibition, because of course prohibition doesn't work. And they have done nothing like that with drugs. They've just decided that they can do that without changing the Constitution. So there's a lot of questions, but no, absolutely. I mean, just like I know someone whose brother killed himself with alcohol. So look, it's tragic. I'm absolutely, and I do not defend it. Yeah. But that doesn't sound like something, it really doesn't sound like something Ross would say.
So what I read was in the very initial stage of Silk Road, in order to provide some stimulus to the trade, Ross grew and sold psilocybin mushrooms on Silk Road. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, it was a trial. I don't even know if it was, maybe that was the very beginning of the site. Yeah. That is the only time they said he actually sold drugs.
Did Ross admit to doing that?
I haven't talked to Ross about it because, I don't have privileged information. So I could be subpoenaed and all that stuff. So we don't really talk about the case. I'm not, that could be true.
Have you ever been on Silk Road?
No.
Any of its versions have you seen?
The only thing I was on was, it was part of the exhibits and stuff like that I was able to read the forum, but I never had heard of it or got on it or any darknet site at all.
But is it known that there were murders for hire on Silk Road?
I believe there were not.
There were not. Okay.
That's what I've been told, and the government didn't allege it.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
But I know I have not gone through every listing on Silk Road or any of that. I don't believe it was listed. I don't believe there were any violent services allowed. As part of that whole manifesto of do no harm.
So, like I said downstairs, I recently accessed Silk Road, at least the current avatar, whoever is running that, I don't know.
Somebody
who it
calling
is.
it Silk Road.
Yeah, it's still called Silk Road, and pretty much all of the listings are drugs. I didn't search for anything. I just looked at the front page, and they accept more than Bitcoin now. They're upgrading their software. So Silk Road is still up. I mean, some version.
Yeah.
Silk Road 3.1 is up. And I have heard of other sites like Silk Road that are also up.
Oh yeah, there's lots.
Yeah.
You know, the judge at sentencing was like, "Well, we're going to make you an example, and it's going to scare all these people, and they won't do it."
Yeah.
The opposite happened, and in fact, Wired wrote about how it boosted darknet sites after the sentencing, and they're bigger, and they do not have that do no harm philosophy or restriction. They're way bigger, much more listings, many more. So it didn't solve anything at all. But the drug war doesn't. You know, it's been $1 trillion and 45 years of the drug war, and it has not stopped drug use at all, but it has made the government much richer and more powerful and invasive. Yeah. And it certainly has populated our prisons to the point where we are the biggest incarcerator on the planet. So it's getting some results for some people, but it's not getting the results it's supposed to, which is, you know, it doesn't work. Prohibition doesn't work. It's been proven, I think, pretty much. You know.
So if someone builds an anonymous market like this, it's natural that people who want to trade in illicit commodities will get on this in order to circumvent the government. It's true. Do you think that, I mean, you said Ross admitted building this market. Do you think he had the responsibility to explicitly ban, because he was the programmer of this market, to explicitly ban certain kinds of things?
Don't know if he was the total programmer, because he's not a programmer, but you know, I guess he got some help from
Richard Bates.
Richard Bates, but also in other things. That Richard Bates worked, from what I understand from that it wasn't only the Silk Road. He was working on some other things. But anyway, that's a whole other issue. But do I think Ross is responsible?
Well, what I mean is, is it possible for the state to charge him on the grounds that even if you were not involved in any of the transactions, the fact that he made it possible and didn't explicitly ban some of these illegal things under the current system of law, that makes you culpable?
Yeah, well, that's a very sticky question, because then is Jeff Bezos responsible for the girl who bought cyanide on Amazon and killed herself with it? Her mother is suing them. I don't know whatever happened. It's been a few years now. Is eBay responsible for prostitution, for murders that have happened, for stolen goods being sold? I mean, Craigslist is the murders, I guess. Is Facebook Live responsible for the murders that happened on Facebook Live, or the terrorism? It's Google. So it's a kind of a sticky question, and if it were a civil case, the host is immune. But because it's criminal, this is the first time a website host has been indicted criminally and put in prison. Now, you know, look, again, I'm not going to defend Silk Road. I agree. There's things that I would, you know, I don't approve of and all of that. The question is, who's responsible, right? And even if, you know, I think it's debatable. I don't want to get into a whole debate about it. But even if you can say a host is at least partially responsible. Now, Backpage, for example, which was child trafficking, the judge said, no, they're not responsible. It's a freedom of speech issue. They are not liable for what other people do on their site, and they are exonerated. Now, it's a state case. It's exactly the same, except it's child trafficking. It's not, which is even, to me, more evil. But it is that question of culpability, and it is a big issue here. But even if you would say that, to give him double life plus 40 years with no parole, saying he's so dangerous that in his mid-20s, hey, look, guys in their mid-20s, girls, guys, whatever, young people, look, older people too, but let's face it, young people do reckless things sometimes. They might not think it through. They don't have life experience. They might be life without parole for a first-time offender, nonviolent. I think surely people can at least look at that and go, you know, that's a little much. I don't know if my taxpayer money is really being well used to protect me from Ross in 20 years when he hasn't been on the internet for 20 years.
Why do you think this happened? You said there were political motivations. Something about Chuck Schumer.
I do think so. You know, and the reason first of all, I think it was about Bitcoin. I think that Chuck Schumer was a ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee. he was the impetus behind the whole focus on Silk Road and the takedown. He even, before trial, congratulated Eric Holder in an open letter. Hey, congratulations, DOJ, you got your man. I'm like, wait a second, we haven't had trial yet. Hello? Innocent until proven guilty. But the judge was recommended by Schumer to her position on the bench. Preet Bharara, the lead prosecutor, was his special counsel for years. Ross was hauled to New York for trial when he wasn't arrested there. He was arrested in California.
In San Francisco.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what really convinced me is when I saw the other sentences, because the biggest drug seller on Silk Road got 10 years. The biggest heroin and cocaine seller got 5. The biggest meth seller got 3. And that was lessened from 6 because of the corrupt agent activity on the site, which was not allowed to be known to Ross's jury, which is a whole other issue of corruption. We don't know who said what really, and who was acting as DPR, because they have the ability to act as DPR.
Yeah, so once they cloned, I was reading about this. Once they cloned all the data from the Iceland server, could they log in as DPR themselves?
I believe it was when they arrested Curtis Green.
Yeah.
And he gave them access. I'm not the right person.
Yeah.
You probably know more than I do, honestly,
Yeah.
because I've been so caught up in law and things, and I'm not real technical.
Yeah.
So I haven't dug into the minutia of what happened.
Yeah.
But I believe it was when they arrested Curtis Green.
What I was reading was there was some faulty technical protocol in Silk Road that leaked its true IP, which normally it's not supposed to do on a Tor network. And this enabled the investigators to track down where the servers were. And it was this data center called Thor Data Center in Iceland. And they could go in and clone the entire thing. And so they could run Silk Road from their own offices.
Right. Well, just to say, they did get it.
Yeah.
How they got it was the explanation by Christopher Tarbell, the head of, who under oath said how he got it, was debunked worldwide. They said this is a lie. This is gibberish. This doesn't make any sense at all. His explanation. What did he say? Okay, now you're going to get me to get technical. It had to do with miraculously finding a CAPTCHA or something.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, what a lot of people think is with the NSA illegally doing this and then leaking it to the FBI, which happens. Yeah. And actually people are saying it happened with Trump.
Yeah.
That that's what the NSA does. And then they make up a story. Well, his story didn't, from by experts, lots of people wrote about it, said this is absurd. The defense called for an evidentiary hearing to investigate it, and the judge would not allow that. And but yes, they had control of the server, and at some point, and didn't take the site down. And then they, then they want to. I don't know. Are they responsible for some of the things that happened too? Chuck Schumer was like, we have to take the site down immediately. No, they didn't. They left it up for months. And so I don't know. The hypocrisy is pretty stunning when you start getting involved with the government. But in any case, I was just going to say that, I guess I just said it, that whatever's true, it's just, and I have my beliefs because knowing Ross and everything, but double life sentence without parole and plus 40 years is just, it's, the other thing I was going to say, that's what it was, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that the real shocker for me was that I found out that the guy who started Silk Road 2.0 and ran it and admitted to running it, and the government arrested and said, oh, this is an identical site. It's bigger. It sells more drugs per month. It has more listings. He did no time. He was out in 16 days. So I don't know where he is. But
do you know the reasoning behind?
No, I don't. In fact, it's been kept very quiet, and I uncovered that, it's right there in the BOP.
Was he American as well?
Yes, he's American. Okay. He's from Texas, actually.
Okay.
And he, if Ross is so dangerous that he can't be let out after decades, how come this guy's not dangerous? So why aren't we getting equal treatment under the law?
So part of the story could be these allegations that he ordered executions. So, like, coming to the story of Curtis Green, do you think that how much do you think is true of the fact that he ordered first the beating up and then the execution
Ross
of
ordered?
Curtis
Oh no, I
of
agree with Curtis. I
Green
don't think it was
and
Ross.
wanted proof?
No,
Okay.
I absolutely don't. And it's part of the petition of the Supreme Court that this was never charged. Why, if it's true and they have proof, why didn't they charge him at trial? Why isn't one of the charges a trial? It's not.
Oh, this is not.
No, absolutely not. There's no violent charges at all.
I see.
And
Okay.
yeah, that's a misconception. And because the government initially charged him in the criminal complaint with it, and then they dropped it. But the media had already trumpeted it all over. Oh my God, murder for hire, right?
Yeah.
Which is shocking. But it wasn't charged. They dropped it.
Yeah.
And then yet the judge used it to justify her unreasonable sentence. But it was never brought before a jury. It was never proven. It was never charged at trial.
Yeah.
So this is a violation of the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, which says we have a right to a jury trial.
Yeah.
The judges don't get to say, well, maybe the jury didn't say so, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Based on what?
Yeah.
You don't get to do that.
Do you think that, well, obviously the murder did not happen, but
no,
do you
there
think
was no
that...
murder. And that's another thing. A lot of the media, it's like, oh, murder charges. I'm like,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
There were no charges at all, but they weren't ever, even the government never said that he murdered anyone.
Yeah. But do you think the fact that, well, the murder didn't happen makes a difference?
Well, it does. I mean, in sentencing, normally if a murder doesn't happen and there's murder for hire proven, which again, it hasn't been, it's 10 years. Normally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, I might try to kill you, but if I don't kill you, it's not as bad, as, according to the law, as if I do kill you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't, as far as Ross's character, I don't think he did it. So
yeah.
And I'd really, honestly, the government piles on all kinds of charges. I mean, they threw in false IDs because someone had false IDs on there. Believe me, if they could have proven murder for hire, they would have brought it to trial.
Yeah.
They would have been very happy to do that.
Yeah.
And they never did.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think it's very fortunate if anyone isn't murdered. And I think, people can regret things, but it's really bad when it's an irrevocable regret.
Yeah.
If you don't kill somebody and you tried, but you didn't, maybe you're like, oh, thank God I didn't. But in Ross's case, it's all moot because I don't think he ever even tried.
Yeah. In my reading, this is not the only case of execution. I read that DPR's chat records reveal that he ordered more executions against blackmailers. So here's a quote of a chat message. It says, "In my eyes, friendly chemist," this was a user on Silk Road, who was, I guess, blackmailing. "Friendly chemist is a liability and I wouldn't mind if he was executed. I have the following info. His name is Blake Krokoff, lives in an apartment near White Rock Beach, age 34, province, British Columbia, wife plus 3 kids.
Well, again, these were dropped after 2 months. So either those are not, digital evidence is very, and I've been told by many experts, and I have proof of it really because we found tampered evidence after trial, which I can't remember if we talked about that
We
yet.
haven't talked about it.
Okay,
I was about to get to this.
Yeah, okay. So the government dropped the charges. So that may or may not be anything. It may be fabricated, it may be planted, or it may be actually there by someone else and they couldn't connect. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They didn't charge him with it. It's not anything except what they, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I mean, I don't, again,
And you don't know why they dropped the charge
No.
either. Okay.
But they did.
I see.
But they did. And they've never prosecuted it. And like I said, their tendency is to pile on charges. And even at trial or at any time, they never charged it.
So
that should say enough because it's like you can say all you want to the media and the media can say everything they want.
Yeah.
We're entitled to a trial, by supposedly, we want an impartial jury of our peers. And that is, and not a judge deciding it's true because the media or the government says so.
Yeah.
That, in fact, the Sixth Amendment was partially written to prevent judges doing that. And That's why we have trials.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, why have one? It's mob rule and it's a lynching.
Yeah, yeah. So what you were about to say something about the evidence tampering?
Yes.
So what's the story?
So after trial, the defense, what happened before trial is that what happens is the government dumped, and apparently they do this routinely, even though they'd had this material for a year, very shortly before trial they dumped 6 terabytes. It's a lot. That's like, I looked it up, it's like over 1 billion, I think it's typewritten pages of material to go through. Well, it's impossible to go through everything, but the defense continued to go through it after trial and found a folder. I don't know how much in the weeds we want to get about this, but there was evidence that a law enforcement, said he was a law enforcement person, was selling Dread Pirate Roberts information about the investigation, and it ended at, I believe it was August 15th. What was discovered later is another folder which had it going, it ended at some point. The other folder, and this is written up in Motherboard, it's written up in other publications that you can link to on our website. The other folder that was discovered after trial had further discussion that had been deleted out of the part that was in the evidence. That was between Dread Pirate Roberts supposedly and this law enforcement. It was deleted. It's proven tampered, and it's important because it shows.
Was this Inspector Force that you're talking about?
No, he was already in prison.
Okay,
I think.
Okay.
Well, if he wasn't, no, they think it's, well, you know what? I don't know. I'm getting all confused about those details. It's all, so but they think it was a third agent.
Okay.
And so. This is tampered evidence.
What were these discussions about?
It was about this agent selling information about the investigation to Dread Pirate Roberts. And Dread Pirate Roberts, it shows that he paid him for information. The payments continued, but the discussion was deleted. And it stopped the discussion at April 15th, I believe. But see, those last few weeks are very crucial. Because Ross says this is when he was set up.
Yeah.
So, and got lured back in and all that. So these last few weeks would be very telling, and they're gone. And this person, whoever it is, with high-level admin access, apparently deleted it. It's tampered evidence. And the thing is, what I've been told is that you can't forensically tell if digital evidence has been tampered with unless you find something like this. We don't know what else was tampered with. We don't know how many. And then there was the Dread Pirate Roberts login to the forum. We don't know how many times that guy logged in. We know it wasn't Ross because he was in solitary confinement. And
how was this information known?
It was discovered by the defense team later. They found this folder called an S file, labeled S file, that apparently the person deleting the evidence didn't overlooked, and so it was discovered. And as well as the login, it was discovered. It was in there. It was in the government's evidence, but it was buried.
Yeah. So I have this list of points that's mentioned on the Free Ross website, and I just want to hit them once because I think they're important. So the first point is violations of the Fourth Amendment. To what extent and why do you think there were Fourth Amendment violations during his arrest?
Yeah, and I'll say real quick. The appeal addresses this and saying that, see, the Fourth Amendment has a particularity requirement, which is you can't just go into somebody's house, say, and just search for whatever you can find from attic to basement. You have to say, I'm looking for X. If you see something else suspicious, you have to go get a warrant for that.
Yeah.
And that's to prevent the government from just rummaging through all our stuff. I mean, it's a privacy issue. Well, as far as Ross's quote unquote digital house in terms of his laptop and Gmail and Facebook accounts, they didn't meet the particularity requirement. So they just rummaged with whatever they wanted. And the argument is, well, it's digital, it doesn't count. So it's really my takeaway is, okay, so what you're saying is the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply in the digital age.
Okay.
So that's the general warrants issue. By the way, we fought the Revolutionary War partially about general warrants, and the Fourth Amendment was written to prevent this. The other issue is the pen, trap, and trace devices. Pen, register, and trap and trace devices known as pen traps. And this is one of the issues in the petition to the Supreme Court. because they used.
This is a device that clones the hard disk.
It's kind of, I'm gonna, and once again, me being tech stupid,
Yeah.
but basically, it's a device that can track incoming and outgoing internet traffic in this case. So, and I'm gonna explain it somewhat in the talk on Friday.
Yeah.
But basically, they had no warrant or probable cause, and probable cause means a good reason. The government can't just go, I want to put a warrant on your stuff. You have to have a reason, like I suspect him of this and this is why. They didn't have that. And yet they basically use these pen traps without a warrant to do that. And that's in violation of the search and seizure law of the Fourth Amendment. And it's very important in the digital age because, again, we keep a lot of our data on our phones and laptops. And they since a very antiquated ruling now, it's been almost 4 decades based on the dial telephones. That's a whole thing I'm going to go into in the talk. But basically, it's a loophole. And so basically, they're able to access all kinds of personal and relevant data through our browsing history, our apps, and all of that. To know what political party or affiliation you're interested in, to know what religion, to know if you're pregnant, to know what sexual orientation, and on and on and on, without a warrant. And this is pretty concerning. People go, well, I have nothing to hide. Good, that's great. The government or the NSA or whoever's doing it can also use it to blackmail officials, to blackmail judges and Congress people, and it's dangerous. It's not just, and it's prevented. Supposedly, they tried to prevent it with the Fourth Amendment, but it's been weakened in the digital age because of this loophole. And without privacy, we really don't have freedom. It's the government can expand. It's a slippery slope, and can be abused.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about these 2 corrupt federal investigators who are, you say they are currently in prison,
yes,
and they were hidden from the jury?
That is accurate. Karl Mark Force who was a DEA agent, Drug Enforcement Agency, was at the core of the Silk Road investigation in Maryland.
Yeah.
The defense knew about him. The other agent, Sean Bridges, who was working for the NSA and the Secret Service, the defense didn't even know he existed until after the trial. The government knew. And but the defense said, look, these are corrupt guys. They're being investigated. They had unfettered access to the site. They had the ability to act as Dread Pirate Roberts, as I said, other aliases. They used lots of aliases. They could, they had passwords, PIN numbers, bank account keys. They could write things on the forum and on the marketplace, take things away. They could manipulate the data. Total open season on the site. Keys to the kingdom, is what journalists said. To me, this is important information a jury should know.
Yeah.
The defense brought it pre-trial to the judge, and the government said, well, if this becomes known, then it's going to impede our investigation into these guys. So we can't tip them off. So the defense said, okay, let's wait. We'll wait, and you do your investigation, and then we'll have the trial, and then we can be fully open. And no, that wasn't okay. They were going to go ahead. Turns out the agents already knew they were being investigated. They'd already been interviewed. So that was a lie. And the jury was not allowed to know anything about them or anything related to them at all. There were a lot of things that the jury wasn't allowed to know. They weren't allowed to know Ross's libertarian views. They weren't allowed to know that other things besides drugs were sold on the site. They weren't, there's just a whole list of things that the government was allowed to hide from the jury and create their own narrative to paint a picture of Ross as this evil drug kingpin. And it was very distorted.
So these 2 federal investigators, what are they in prison for?
Well, they stole over $1 million. They used their access to the site to steal over $1 million.
In Bitcoin?
Yes, it would be Bitcoin, yeah. And there's more about them. You can, Sean Bridges was lately something with him more that he did that added to his time. Honestly, I don't remember. But they're both in prison. Yeah. They both admitted it. Unfortunately, their emails are still encrypted. They did not use that as part of their deal with them, to decrypt their emails. I guess they didn't want them public. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's still sealed information, undisclosed information about them. That I'm like, why? Let's have it. Let's see, what were they up to? And Carl Force, the guy in prison, was behind the evidence that was submitted in Maryland that says Ross planned to murder or DPR planned to murder for hire. It was provided by him. He was the guy in the chats with Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Whenever I got an email from Ross, nothing was capitalized. It wasn't perfectly punctuated. It was kind of a dash it off kind of thing. This little chat was like perfect punctuation. It sounded like the same person wrote the whole thing and had it proofread. And I'm like, this sounds so fake to me. And that's just my personal opinion, knowing Ross and having gotten many emails from him and stuff. But it just doesn't ring true. But in any case, the guy's in prison and we're supposed to take his word for it that it's all valid.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
When you say, I don't know too much about how trials happen, nor do I think a lot of our audience does. So when you say that the jury wasn't allowed to know certain things, like Ross's libertarian views, in what way was this enforced? Like
the judge said so.
Okay. So the judge just said you can't have a discussion about... Okay. And that's possible to do.
You can't mention it. Yeah, apparently.
It's possible to just say that you can't
you cannot
even mention
those. I guess because it would imply that he was idealistic and philosophical in his creation of the site, not a drug kingpin. How many drug kingpins are libertarians? Not too many. And yet, at sentencing, she used that against Ross. And she said, well, I know you started this site for philosophical reasons. I'm like, well, she got that right. And I just don't know it's a philosophy you've left behind. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I thought we had First Amendment protections and you're not supposed to use people's political views against them to enhance a sentence, and yet she did. Yeah.
So you were there when this whole thing was unfolding. You were in the courtroom when all this stuff about, you can't talk about his views.
That may have been decided pre-trial. I can't remember.
Yeah.
She didn't say it openly in court in front of the jury, obviously. So I don't remember, actually. Yeah. I know it was precluded.
But you were aware that this is something that could not be talked about in the court. And the lawyer was aware.
Yep.
Yeah. So I read also...
Because he wasn't allowed to say anything about it. So.
I see. I read also that the defense cross-examination was repeatedly blocked at trial. Could you unpack this a little bit in like simpler terms?
And there's a lot on our site. One place was there was a government agent, Jared Deryagan, who was an investigator, who first of all said he believed there were many DPRs. He was on the site for 2 years for thousands of hours as a alias.
Yeah.
He believes there are many DPRs. He was honing in on one main one, Mark Karpelis. Talked about that. Talked about how Karpelis' lawyers met with the corrupt agency in Maryland and offered them a deal as far as giving them a name if they'd back off Karpelis because they were pursuing him as DPR. And it was very interesting. It was unfolding, and I have it on there on the site. So at that point, the prosecution objected vociferously. The judge actually argued, said, well, wait a minute, that's okay. We can pursue this. She finally shut down court, we all went adjourned for a long weekend. We came back and suddenly, whoa, wait a minute, you can't mention it. This is shut down. The jury is told not to basically disregard everything they heard from a government agent based on government evidence. This agent said he had probable cause to believe Karpelis was Dread Pirate Roberts, and it was all coming out. And it was shut down, and he was not allowed to be mentioned again. Also, when the defense lawyer was interviewing the agents who seized the laptop and were investigating the laptop, they admitted they didn't follow the guidelines. The computer crashed in the middle. They admitted they didn't follow protocol, and he was trying to get out of them, some of this information. That was curtailed. She told him to bring his own witness, which is putting the onus of proof onto the defendant, which is not allowed. It's the prosecution's job to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And actually, Ross's lawyer called for a mistrial because he said, wait a minute, you can't tell me to bring a witness. But then when he did, anyway, she wouldn't let the witness testify. So
who was this witness?
That witness was Stephen Bellovin from Columbia University. He's a crypto security expert and technical expert.
Yeah.
She also precluded Andreas Antonopoulos from testifying about Bitcoin. She said the jury understands Bitcoin just fine. It's irrelevant and unnecessary. I'm like, I've had Bitcoin
it's pretty hard to understand it.
Say they don't even understand it. It's absurd to say they understood it. I mean, she had other reasons, and maybe were valid, but it seemed pretty extreme to not let the defense have a witness to counter the government's witness, who apparently was full of mistakes. So.
Yeah. So, since the end of last year, I guess there have been some significant developments. There is this petition that has reached the Supreme Court.
It's before the Supreme Court. They haven't accepted it yet.
I see. Okay. So
because it was only docketed early January.
Yeah.
Takes a little while.
So can you tell us a little bit about the points that the petition makes and why citizens in general should care?
Absolutely, and I'm going to get into this more in my talk. There's 2 points. You can only, you can't really present. I can't go into, there were corrupt agents to the Supreme Court. They don't want to get into the weeds of a case. They do want to only address things that are broad-reaching. That's by the time you get to the Supreme Court, you need to have 1 or 2 issues. So we have 2.
Yeah.
One is the Fourth Amendment issues of the pen traps, which I already touched on, which is saying that is the government allowed to, without a warrant and without probable cause, search an individual's internet traffic, millions of people using the internet, that they can just go in and see what you're doing on the internet without a warrant and your browsing history, everything, and without probable cause. Is this a violation of the Fourth Amendment, or should they have to get a warrant? I mean, I personally don't feel very comfortable thinking that the government can just have open season on all my internet habits. I think that's private. I think that's something that I don't really particularly want them to just be able to do any old time. That's that. Yeah. And then there's the question of the sentence, and can a judge, as we discussed, without a jury trial, without it being brought to trial, use an uncharged allegation to enhance an unreasonable sentence? The Sixth Amendment says no, they can't. The Sixth Amendment is to protect us from a judge, one person, deciding something's true without putting it before the rigorous proof of trial and a jury. And so, is this unconstitutional, a violation of the Sixth Amendment? Those are the 2 issues.
Yeah. And
they do affect a lot of people. Obviously, the Fourth Amendment issue is huge for everyone. But the Sixth Amendment issue is too, because actually this has been going on for decades, apparently. I didn't know this. When I first heard that they were even going to discuss it at trial without having to prove it, without having to do anything, and just say, just believe us, it's true. And the judge allowed it, which is very prejudicial. I said to our lawyer, wait a minute, they didn't charge it. Don't they have to prove things? Isn't that what a court of law is about? And he goes, no, they do it all the time. So apparently there are people all over this country in prison based on what they call judge-found facts. They call them facts. I mean, they're not actually proven facts, but that's what they call it in legalese, where a judge decides something that's been a person's been acquitted by a jury or hasn't even been charged. Like in Ross's case, they can go, no, wait, I don't care what the jury says or didn't hear. I think it's true. This has been going on for a long, long time, and the district courts and mainly the appellate courts are looking for guidance to the Supreme Court, like, well, what do we do with this? And so that's the other issue, and it really is broad-reaching, even though most people might not be affected by it. There's millions of people that are. Yeah.
When you talk about this ruling, what court was it that the ruling was in?
Well, first it goes to the district, which is the trial and the sentencing. And that's New York, Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
Not sure exactly. I mean, they came up with a reason, but it was just it was very tenuous that Ross should be in New York. But I've been told that the Southern District, if they want something, they get it. They're very aggressive. And then you appeal it to the circuit. So because it's New York, it goes to the Second Circuit. We're still in New York here. And the appellate court, 3 appellate judges, decide if there was error in the trial. They decided, despite corrupt agents, despite the warrants, despite the unreasonable sentence and the uncharged crimes justifying it, they did not deny what the judge did. I really didn't feel like they were comfortable. From my opinion at oral arguments, and I'm not the only one, felt like they were not comfortable with the sentence and that they may not have given that sentence, but they upheld it. So then your next step in the system is, okay, if you guys won't do what we feel you should, we're going to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's where we are.
Okay. You do know that it was highlighted as petition of the day.
I do.
Yeah.
And I was very happy to see that.
It was fairly recent, actually.
It was, and I've been told that the person who decides this is very well respected.
Yeah.
And that it's actually quite a good thing.
Yeah.
It shows probably that they will pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Our lawyers, Williams and Connolly, are some of the most renowned lawyers in the country. And basically they really took it because they said they think it's a very important case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they love Ross. They really do. They've met him. They know who he is. And so they feel very good about representing him. They feel that this was a draconian sentence and very unfair. And,
yeah.
As I said, they worked with Ross on this. And and they're very, very well respected at the court. And so I'm hopeful that it won't, so many people petition the Supreme Court. They take a very small percentage, but I'm hopeful that they won't, that they will hear this in some manner.
Yeah, I checked out the amicus briefs.
Oh, good for you. You're a very good researcher. I'm going to say, I gotta tell you, you're better than most people.
Doing a PhD,
very good.
So it seems like there's a lot of people who are very concerned about the widely reaching relevance of this case, particularly pertaining to the laws that will take shape for our digital
They should
age.
be. They absolutely should be.
Yeah.
And what I thought was very heartening and I liked was that it's from both sides of the political spectrum, from conservative to very liberal, very left wing to right wing and all that, and libertarian, and because it's not a partisan issue. And I think that's really good. Yeah. Because people, may differ on some things, but they can look at this and go, yeah, this is serious. Yeah, yeah. In particular, having been I was born in 1989, I kind of grew up with the internet, and technology has been changing very rapidly. Very. As I was growing up. But the laws have not. Yeah, and right. Law, the change of law is very slow compared to this increasing pace of technology. So we are being repeatedly confronted by these questions where we have this fossilized laws trying to grapple the best they can with new age technology that they were not designed for. Absolutely. Just at the University of Texas at Austin here, I've been to multiple talks that address different aspects of how the law is becoming increasingly inadequate to handle. Good. It is. Technological questions. I'm going to quote on Friday Sandra Sotomayor, who's a Supreme Court justice, saying these laws are ill-suited to the digital age. We need to kind of get with it because we're losing our protections. It's a way for us to lose our freedom. So it's very essential that the courts adapt. Yeah. Yeah. To our and expand our protections to include digital material. Yeah. Just because the founding fathers didn't put laptops in the Fourth Amendment, they forgot that part. Darn. Yeah. But honestly, it's just. Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit about your experiences and lessons in your activism since you started getting very seriously involved in this project and doing what you can. So just a broad overview, what has your activities comprised since the arrest and trial? What have you been involved in? Well, I mean, when I started, of course it was very shocking. The whole thing was just so shocking. And but when I started reading what the media was saying about Ross, I'm like, that's not my son. That is not my son. So I just put up a page on the internet, this is who Ross is, and it was all factual,
Mm.
but it was all, it was about him and who he really is, and that was the beginning of our website. And actually, the next stage was a friend who knew Ross personally from high school, and said Ross had been such a positive influence in his life. It really made a big difference in his life, and he wanted to help him.
Yeah.
So he helped us put up another site. That's been a lot of who's helped us, is people like, I know Ross, this is wrong, and helped us put up a site. And then we had another friend who did another iteration, and it's been progressing. So a lot of it's been getting information up on the website. And actually, I feel like I've been on this wave, like trying to stay afloat, not drown, and learning how to surf it sometimes, and other times just paddling for, to stay alive.
Yeah.
Learning law and learning tech and learning how to tweet and learning how to, and being, really put in a whole different culture, which is the millennial and, just young culture. And millennial older, but a lot younger than I am.
Yeah, and a lot has changed in this
so
generation. It's probably going to be I sometimes imagine if it's this hard for intelligent, educated people of a generation back to keep up with what's happening now, how much harder is it going to be for us when we reach our age? Question. Because the pace of change keeps increasing, so it's gonna be probably much harder, regardless of how smart I think I am, because it's just, well, of course, it's hard to.
Which is all the more reason why Ross she could have given him 20 years. That's long.
Yeah.
Not on the internet. He would not be allowed on the internet the whole time.
Yeah.
He's going to come out and do another Silk Road or be a threat to anyone? It's absurd. It's terrible to give him more than that. Yeah. And that's plenty. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Believe me, for a young man who's, But, so yeah, absolutely. For me, it's like learning a foreign language as an adult.
Yeah.
I'll always never be quite fluent. I'll never feel as comfortable as you.
Yeah.
And then that may be true for you, but you may progress along. I was very no, I don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was very, I was not the most tech savvy anyway.
Been pushed off the deep end of the pool.
I have been hurled into this situation, and I've learned a lot. But I'm also, as you can tell from some of my responses, I'm like, I guess I know that. But it's been more. I've been involved in the law, the legal aspects, and also you were asking me, what have I learned? I've learned that we are losing our freedoms very quickly. That the criminal justice system is not what I had thought it was as an American. That the way they prosecute people is shocking. I talked to a former prosecutor who told me, he goes, Lynn, they lie and they will cheat to get their win. And the more I learn about how this happens and hear stories, it's terrifying. And it's un-American, and most people have no idea what's going on. And we are losing jury trials. I mean, 97% of people plea, even to things they haven't done, because they're so intimidated and threatened by prosecutors that if they go to trial, they'll lose and get a worse sentence, that they just say, okay, I'll just plea then. And on and on and on. And what we're doing is it's really wrong. And through the drug war, which again, I'm not for drugs. You don't have to be for drugs to be against the drug war, because it's not about drugs anyway. If it were, they'd stop doing it because it's not working. It's about government expansion and money, basically. It's filling our prisons. It's over-sentencing. It's hurting children, the children of these people who themselves statistically are more likely to be in prison. And it's becoming an industry that is a shameful industry. It's human trafficking as far as I'm concerned. And it's made us the biggest incarcerator on the planet. This is the drug war. If they stopped the drug war, the prisons, they wouldn't have so many. They would certainly have a hard time filling them. And over 60% of people in prisons, according to, I believe it's the Sentencing Project, are nonviolent drug offenders. Over 60%. And even the violent people in there, it's drug related to gang warfare and stuff like that. So I've learned a lot about that, and about the politics behind it. And I feel like we're losing our country, the principles it was based on, and we need to wake up, because I feel like we're at a tipping point in history, and like as you said in the courts, it's happening in the courts, and it's happening that we can go one way towards freedom and innovation, or we can go towards more government intrusion and control. We have to decide, and we live at a very important crux in history, which, as the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. Well, it's very interesting, but it's also very crucial and pivotal. And people, I really think, you guys, it's your future. You're young, it's your future. Do you want to live in a free place, in a free world, where people decide their fate and can pursue their dreams? Or do we want the government telling us what we're going to do? And if you don't do it, even for nonviolent things or things that, over sentencing people to spend their lives in a cage at our expense, it's shocking. And that's really what has impacted me the most.
Yeah.
Because I see the kids, I see the families, I know them. And of course, my own son and my own experience. And, I'm not the typical profile, and neither is Ross. And then the guards there say to him, or say to me, they go, "What? Ross is a good guy and he doesn't belong in here. He shouldn't be in here." I'm like, "Tell me about it." But he's, but a lot of those people don't. And I just think there's a better way, and a more humane way, and a more constructive way. And so that's really my passion beyond Ross, is what I've seen from my own eyes in the criminal justice system. And so I think we really need to wake up. Yeah.
I was recently volunteering at, it's called the Inside Books Project, where they send donated books to prisoners in Texas. And in general, I'm of the opinion that there are already other countries that have taken a much more fruitful and what I would say compassionate approach towards
and constructive.
Fruitful, prison being more rehabilitatory, as opposed to being you did something wrong, we're going to be punishing you. And I think that works better, even if your objective is to correct crime. It still works better. So there's obviously that angle, and that has that's a very general problem, I think, and that reaches far beyond just Ross's case.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They call it correctional institution.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of correction going on there.
Yeah.
I see criminal training program, actually, where people, and I'm not saying this is Ross, because he's keeping his soul, he's keeping his mind healthy, and part of that's why I visit him a lot, and others do, to keep that connection. But people come in there nonviolent or scared, because it's a scary place, it's violent, people are in there. You have to toughen up to survive. You have to develop a criminal mentality almost to survive. It's a criminal training program. That's what it is. It's not correctional. And so what are we really doing here? And are we just there? Are we just filling cells to make money for the government and all the subsidiary industries that feed off this? Because there's many. And create a jobs program? Or are we really trying to do something that makes a difference? I understand the thinking of, someone's violent and dangerous and society shouldn't be exposed to them. Even those people, I would venture to guess, after decades of being incarcerated, have matured. But nonviolent offenders, I don't understand the day of technology that we can't put an ankle bracelet on these people and even allow them to make restitution to now there were no victims who came forward at Ross's trial, but any victims or whatever. To somehow, there's got to be a better way. A less costly way in human lives and money.
Yeah. So I imagine that once this severe sentencing happened and it was treated as an open and shut case, that most people would, from that point on, not be very interested in hearing anything about it because they have made up their mind. But you have been going around talking to groups that have lent an ear. So who have these people been? What kind of demographics do they represent? Who are the people that have been hearing out your side and Ross's side of the story? I'm interested to know. Yeah.
Well, I joked to Ross that all my new best friends are all in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Techies or whatever, who would have thought? But no, it's mostly young people, I would say, but not all. But it's libertarians and people who believe in voluntary interaction, of course, they were the first. They were like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't right. But big people involved in cryptocurrency, which overlaps there. But, I've spoken at the National Libertarian Convention. I've spoken, Reason Foundation was one of the amici in this, and they're having me speak at their private conference next month. They're very well respected, libertarian foundation, Cato as well. So the libertarians have been a huge support. People who, like Drug Policy Alliance, who also wrote an amicus brief, who are fighting the drug war, they have been very supportive. I spoke at their conference in last fall. And as I said, I've just recently spoke at a Bitcoin conference in Dallas where people who are aware of it and understand, and a lot of them came up to me and said, oh my gosh, now that you spell it out, I had no idea. Because the media does not dig very deep into this and doesn't get the big picture, frankly, many of the time. Not all, much of the time. So people involved in crypto. And so I would say that's, Ross found himself at the crux of this, between cryptocurrency and privacy and drug war and, protection of freedoms. He's like at the crux of a lot of this. It crosses many lines, political affiliations and everything. So it's been across the spectrum, but I would say generally it's those groups.
Yeah.
But, and there is overlap.
But you said that, this is generally understood. And as I was reading about this, I could tell that Ross had philosophical motivations behind building Silk Road.
He's an idealist.
So if you could tell me a little bit, dating back before this whole thing, because you're his mother, you probably have some understanding of what his philosophical outlook was. So could you tell me a little bit about him, his character and his philosophy?
Sure. Actually, my husband and I are entrepreneurs. We haven't been fans of big government particularly. We are kind of libertarian leaning anyway. So I do understand it. And Ross, as I said, or maybe, I forget, I just did 2 interviews in a row, so I'm forgetting what I told you.
Yeah.
He became interested at Penn State in Ron Paul's campaign, worked on Ron Paul's campaign, and in Austrian economics and free markets. So, and I understood all that. I really, and I've since met Dr. Paul. He's a wonderful
And you were aware of his interest in these before the whole Silk Road.
Yes, I was.
Yeah,
and we discussed it. We'd have great animated discussions. I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, or we talk about it. It was all. But I of course, I'm an American. I believe in freedom. It's like that's at the foundation of our country, which is one reason I'm so upset about what I see going on. In any case, so he was very idealistic, very philosophical. That's the thing. Ross, I don't know how many people would say El Chapo is idealistic. Ross was literally living with 3 roommates who I stayed there. My husband and I stayed there as guests. They knew Ross and all this thing. Well, those roommates didn't know him. Well, maybe those were other roommates, but these roommates, one of them
is in San Francisco.
Yeah, one of them came and testified at trial. So they love Ross. But anyway, he didn't even own a car. Ross is not motivated. He's not someone. Not that I'm not saying he hated money, but that's not what drives Ross. He's very idealistic. He still is. He still believes in helping people. He does it in the prison. He's helped them. There's 4 inmates. There's 100 letters on our website with people who know Ross saying who he really is to the judge. And they sign their names. And they're just like, please give him the least you can. That's plenty. Believe me. Well, she gave him the most she could. If she could have given him the death sentence, apparently she would have. But she basically did, actually, when you think about what she did. But in any case, they all, there was 4 of them were inmates who wrote and said, he's helped me get into college, remotely from prison. He's helped me get my GED diploma. He tutored. He led classes. He's encouraging. He helps them with their cases because he's learning about the law. He'll give talk to them. He's very well liked because he is so caring about people, and he always has been. And in fact, you mentioned being involved in the prison literacy or with
the
books.
Inside Books project.
His Good Bag and Books company gave 10% of their profits to. That was one of the charities he gave to here in Austin. Kind of ironically, because now he's in prison reading books. But yeah, and so he's always had that caring about humanity and wanting to contribute. So he's always been like that.
Yeah. When you say that there were certain he had viewpoints and philosophies that you didn't necessarily always agree with, do I take it to mean that he had a more extreme or radical view of philosophy than your own?
Yeah, it wasn't so much the philosophy, but different ideas like, okay, how would we do the roads if they're all private? That sort of discussion. I wasn't close to ideas, but a lot of libertarians feel like everything should be private. For that's kind of discussion. It wasn't like a deep-seated philosophical difference. It was more, that kind of discussion.
I see.
It was, when you're in college, as you know, you get into all kinds of intellectual explorations and stuff, and that's what he's like. He's very curious. He's studying artificial intelligence right now.
In a very formative stage where you haven't really made up your mind.
And you might do things that are a bit reckless. You might do things that later you look back and go, God, what was I thinking? That was crazy. But
I've done reckless things.
Of course you have. That's the thing. Haven't we all at that age? And to say, okay, no redemption for you.
Yeah.
No second chance for you. Nothing for the rest of your life. You have to die in there. I'm sorry. That's a little excessive, said the least. That's barbaric, actually.
I read that he was. This interested me. I grew up an atheist, but I recently, over the last couple of years, I've started really getting into some Eastern philosophy. And I heard that Ross was into Eastern philosophy.
Well, he meditates regularly, yeah.
To what extent do you know about his interest in Eastern philosophy?
Someone actually sent him a book. I think over time he's dabbled. But someone sent him a book called The Mind Illuminated.
Oh, I have been recommended the same book.
I'm trying to read it, but it's heavy going. But he's had time, and that was a wonderful gift. I would love to thank the person. I don't know who it was. He didn't sign his name or her name, but that he has pursued, and he meditates regularly. Actually, last year we had a Meditate with Ross Day, and asked people all over the world to meditate at the same time. People did. It was really neat. So he, and in fact, he goes into the prison chapel often and meditates there. They actually provide a cushion, things like that, which is decent. And in general, Ross is a spiritual person, and I am also, and that is one of the things that gets me through the day. But he's practicing meditation, and it's really helped him a lot.
Yeah.
It's very hard in there to not become frightened, discouraged, depressed. You can imagine, bitter. And Ross is never like that. He's always intentionally positive. I mentioned to the other interviewer, one person asked him and tweeted this, who visited him, said, well, would you want the judge who did this to you to be in prison? And Ross said, no, I would never wish that on anyone going through what I'm going through. He said, unless they're so violent that society have to be, he said, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So he's not even bitter about her.
Yeah.
And that's an example for me, because it's a struggle, to be honest. And, but he feels like that isn't productive. It's not, he remains positive, he tries to remain a good influence. This is in prison, in a violent maximum security prison, he's holding this position.
Yeah. So
how can we be afraid that Ross will get out of prison in 20 years and be a danger to anyone? It's wrong. This is just wrong.
Over the last couple of years, I've been at least trying to maintain a daily meditation practice.
Oh, nice.
And
It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's transformative. I can attest to the fact that it has very significantly changed my life, all for the better. And when I was volunteering for the Inside Books project, I had to write open letters from inmates and then read their letters for what books they want and match their letters from books in their collection and then write a letter back. And in all my letters, I had a short paragraph with instructions for like a secular meditation.
Yeah.
I went to a meditation retreat, and part of that was this solitary confinement, voluntary. Of course, it's not like prison, but you're by yourself. And I think if you can cultivate this sort of practice, it can be very, very beneficial no matter what kind of life situation you find yourself in. So if I could talk to Ross, regardless of the rest of the case, or regardless of whatever I believe or not believe, I think I would tell him that the meditation is important.
And he would totally agree with you. And it's really been a wonderful thing for him. I think it's really helped him, just maintain that perspective. And
So
it's a little bite of freedom in the
so you have been meeting and visiting him at a certain periodicity since his arrest. How many times have you met him since?
Oh gosh,
have you been
in the last 4 years?
Yeah,
I couldn't even begin to count them. A lot.
Oh, okay.
Regularly. Depending on friends filling in and stuff. Every week or every 2 weeks for 3.5 years. And then now, I'm not there now, but friends are going. Actually, a couple of friends from high school from Austin are going this coming weekend, who are still remain loyal and friends and know Ross of who he really is, I mean, so I can't count, but a lot, try to do it a lot, because so many people, it's so horrible and sad that this huge visiting room, and maybe there'll be 3, maybe 5 inmates on a busy day with their families or whoever. There's hundreds of guys in there. There's people who are just forgotten, or that's become their world, and that's it for them. They're warehoused. And I am determined that will not happen to Ross, as much as I'm determined he will not die in that place. It cannot be, and I want to help maintain as much as I can his mental and emotional health, because I just, and that visits are their lifeline. So I'm willing to uproot myself. I'm willing to go where I have to go. And, of course, facilitate friends and family also. And it's so important.
As you keep visiting him over time since his arrest, what do you make of how he is feeling? Like, how is he doing?
Well, that's the thing. He's maintained himself. He's still him. We joke. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a lot of fun. We have fun. We actually
you don't see
forget.
any great depression.
No. I have
bearing
never
down on him.
Now, let me say, he's human. He's had his very down moments. He's had his very desperate moments. So I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. But he doesn't stay there. He's very mentally strong and emotionally strong. And he has a lot of support. But he is those things. And so he doesn't stay there. He has those moments, and it's very tough. But he's still him. He's not changed. He's like I say, we have great talks. We sometimes we forget where we are, and that's really great, and we play cards, and they have a Bible there. We read the Bible and talk about these ideas and things and philosophical things and that kind of thing. But we just whatever, and so it's important,
What kind of condition is he in right now? Is it like a separate cell by himself, or there are other inmates that he has to share space with? He
has what they call a cellie, which is like a roommate in a way in that cell. And yeah, he's got actually a young guy from Texas who's nonviolent. I think he was, I think they purposely gave him to Ross because Ross is like talk about winning the lottery. Get Ross as your cellmate in prison. He's like, oh boy, you're lucky. And I think, he was pretty, young and, innocent and stuff. And they get along fine. It's very easy to get along with Ross. He's a laid back guy and a guy. And so that's been all right. It's his second cellmate, but it's been fine.
Do you know how he has been treated in general since his arrest in all his prisons? Has he talked about?
Yeah. Well, again, he's very well liked. So, I've had guards come up to me and his lawyer and to my husband and say, he doesn't belong in here. He's a good guy. They all love Ross, in the prison, well, he's easy, he's not going to stab them or start a riot or be a problem in any way. And as far as the other inmates as well, Ross, he's very good people skills, but also he just likes people. And anybody, it's funny because he said, well, Mom, gang leaders are people too. And I'm like, you're right. It's just because you're in a maximum security prison doesn't mean you're not a human being who responds to kindness and friendliness and, being treated well. And, he said to me, this time, he says, obviously, if it doesn't go on too much longer, it hasn't been a waste. I've matured. I certainly have a different person than when I was arrested. I have changed. I've met people I never would have met. I've learned things I never would have learned in terms of what's going on, and just different people's lives. I think, and part of that maturity is the kind of compassion that you develop when you hear these stories, because most of us don't hear these stories right from these people. And I do too, from the families and talking to the visiting families, and I get to know them. And he said, it's actually been very rich in a lot of ways. Obviously, I want to leave as soon as possible, but at the same time, it's not like I've wasted my life these last 4 years. I've learned a lot, so that made me feel better because it's tough, but that's the kind of attitude Ross has. He's very inspiring to me. He keeps me going.
Yeah, I remembered just now reading that. I guess when he was growing up. As a family, you guys used to spend your summers in Costa Rica.
Well, yeah, because our business is there.
Yeah, and I read that there are these solar-powered bamboo houses that you built.
CasaBamboo.com.
Yeah, you guys like built this?
My husband did.
Okay.
I didn't build anything. I never built anything.
yeah. And so I guess Ross also spent his summers there. I was just trying to
So he's nature boy. He loves nature. He loves being outside.
Yeah. I was just trying to build a picture of the context in which he grew up and kind of.
Well, he grew up in Austin, and we're a pretty, I don't know, regular family. Not rich. Yeah. Regular middle class family. And I didn't let him have video games and stuff like that growing up. I wanted him to go out and play, and I wanted him to be creative, and he's very artistic.
Yeah.
Played soccer. He's a normal guy, always very mellow and laid back and sweet. He's a very easy child. I guess he's making it up for it now, but he's a very easy person to raise. He was always very sweet and smart, but laid back. He's not a combative kind of person, and and then we had this business, and we would spend time down there, and he's very much loves nature, and so that was one of the good things about moving to this penitentiary from New York, is that he gets to be outside when they're not on lockdown, which has been happening a lot, but not because of him, because of other people fighting and stuff. But so he can go outside, he can see the mountains, he can run a track, and that means a lot to him. He was really, that's very helpful for his and the others' mental health. But he loves nature,
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, talking about the future, what lies ahead? There's this petition
Yeah.
in front of the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
So, how do you see the sequence of steps into the future now?
Well, we'll wait to hear if they'll accept it and hear it in some form or another. There's lots of different things that can happen, and that will depend on what they do. There's another case called Carpenter that's addressing cell phone tracking without a warrant, and they've accepted it. So it's kind of almost a similar case, only more invasive because it's all your internet browsing, all your internet activity, which is even more than just where your cell phone says you are. Because they can turn your devices into tracking devices, which I'm going to explain a little bit on Friday. So it depends how they rule. They could rule to go back to the Second Circuit and the second with guidance, and the Second Circuit say, well, those pen traps are illegal, and anything you got from those pen traps is off limits, which would leave very little anything for a new trial. That would be wonderful. They could just say do nothing, which would be terrible because that leaves you with very few options. They could say, well, they could go back to the Second Circuit and we get no relief with the pen traps, but then we could re-petition the Supreme Court just on the sentence. This is what I understand from the lawyers. Don't hold me to anything legal because I'm not a lawyer. But I also have not, people are saying, well, let's get a petition for a pardon. Let's make an effort for commutation of sentence. And I actually I think that's worth an effort. And really, if anyone has any ways to connect me to politically influential people, including the President of the United States, I would really appreciate some help there because I think that, this actually the same methods that were used against Ross it seems to be coming out, were used against President Trump. I don't know that much about it, but it's exactly the same thing as far as I can tell. There's a lot of issues in this that I think would call for a commutation of this unreasonable draconian sentence. It's just awful. But in any case, I won't give up no matter what. But you do start running out of options. It gets harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are pretty much all the questions that I had for you. But if there's something that you want to conclude this conversation with, something that you want our audience to hear.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you've done a great job. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I
Yeah.
really have. It's been really nice to have talked to an interviewer who's done so much research. Really, it doesn't always happen. It does sometimes, but it's always a pleasure with that. I actually learned some things myself. I think really I kind of summed it up before, which is we're at a crossroads in history and that the law isn't keeping up with the reality of the digital world. And there are laws that are trying to be shoehorned into the reality, and the way it's being shoehorned is actually depriving us of our protections. And those protections are very important. And we want to guard them. And so this is important. It's not just about Ross or me or our family or Silk Road or a website at all. It's way bigger. And I'm hoping the Supreme Court sees it that way. I think they will. I really am hopeful. And especially, as you said, they've noticed it already. And they should notice it. Because again, this is bringing forward questions that it's time. It is time for the courts to catch up a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really it. And thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks a lot for giving me this time.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, and I look forward to your talk on Friday.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Everybody come.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. I'll just leave this rolling because it just gets the ambient sound, although you can't hear it, and then I have to subtract that from the rest of the track to clean it up.
Yeah. Listen, I really did enjoy talking to you, and I feel like let's stay in touch, okay?
Yeah.
If you come up with anything else just between us or anything like that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because you really you're a good researcher, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's my day job is to do research, and
the other thing I was going to say is that I think Ross would really enjoy meeting you, and if you ever do want to come to Colorado or want to meet him, as a friend, not as a media person that would publish it. Yeah. That I think he would enjoy that. So
I am actually going to Colorado for a conference that I've been invited to. This has to do with my research, and this is in
Oh, a
early.
physics thing, or
Although I'm getting a degree in physics, my research is in neuroscience. It's kind of like a cross.
see, he would probably love to talk to you about
Yeah.
science too.
So I will be in Colorado from, well, this is March 1st to the 10th or so, and I
That's
don't
too
know if
soon.
yeah.
You got to go through a background check. I have to send you forms. You send them in. They approve you.
Yeah.
I'd need to tell Ross, oh, watch out for this because you don't even know this person.
Yeah.
But it's so he lets me vet people, and I really think you would be somebody that he would enjoy a
Yeah.
lot. You have a lot in common.
Yeah. I can definitely tell that a lot of our interests are aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's too soon. It won't
Yeah.
it will never clear by then.
Yeah.
That's a week away.
Mm.
But it usually takes about a month.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you want to make the trip back to Colorado. If you ever do,
Yeah.
just let me know.
Mm-hmm.
And and also, yes, let's stay in touch because I feel like you really could help me, maybe, or you have some good points.
Yeah. I tried to maintain in our interview as neutral a position as possible, but I tried to, really do my homework, because then you're not motivated by whatever half-baked
Thank you.
presumptions that you bring in, and you have a clearer picture.
You wouldn't believe how ill-informed some of my interviewers. They'll go, "Oh, what's this case? Tell me about the case." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And then I'm supposed to cover this,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's and others are better, good,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, are you that lazy?
Yeah. How was the one downstairs? Was it?
She was actually very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was.
I sent her this whole email with all of the links and everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and I told her, okay, here's all
that's
the
what I need
links
to
and
put
here's-
together for every interview and misconceptions and blah
Yeah.
blah and just
Yeah.
send it to them.
Yeah.
Spoon feed it to them because
Yeah.
But she was very sweet and she said, I'm going to try to make it an article that you won't regret doing. I'm like, thank you. Because I told her,
Yeah.
so it's just
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that, all of this just kind of happened coincidentally because I happened to talk to someone at a music concert.
I don't believe in coincidence,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think Corinne would have been very happy
Yeah.
to just know that we're
Yeah,
having this
I'll let her
conversation.
know.
Yeah.
And no, I really enjoyed it and thanks. Yeah, thank you. It was a good interview. It really was.
Thanks for swinging by the Room of Lives today. Take care until next time.